Curious Tales at the University of La Verne. Welcome to an oral history of the University of La Verne, a series created by the students and faculty of Honors 304-351 during La Verne's 125th anniversary year, 2016-2017. I'm Al Clark, Professor of Humanities, and I co-taught this course with Brian Best, Assistant Director of Instructional Technology. This series is based primarily on oral histories contained in the university's archives in Wilson Library. Although some of the footage you will see was professionally filmed, most of the oral histories were shot with amateur equipment and with the intention of transcribing them onto paper, not screening them before audiences. Consequently, the sound and video quality of these oral histories is uneven at best. I personally created this episode of an oral history of the University of La Verne. It includes a series of curious tales whose titles are being projected in the frames passing before your eyes, all true, that illustrate the ingenuity, the perseverance, the strengths and weaknesses, and the humor of La Verne faculty and staff over the years. On first impression, the odd but charming adventures recounted here may seem irrelevant, even frivolous, but the values and inherent humanity that they project suggest the inner soul of the University of La Verne. This documentary of the series is entitled simply Curious Stories. Dean Hoover lends his car.
Have you seen pictures of him? Beautiful white beard. Oh, he was wonderful.
Wow.
So dignified. And when we were juniors, my roommate was Arnelia Brubaker. We wanted to take our boyfriends to the show because it was leap year, February 28th in 1932. Well, we didn't have any car, and her boyfriend didn't have any car. Sidney had a coupe, but Sidney said, well, my dad will let me have the car. I can take it. No, we've got it all taken care of. So Arnelia and I went to Dr. Hoover. This is so dumb. I don't know how we could have been so nervy. I told him our predicament, and said, we wondered if you would let us borrow your car for the evening. Can you imagine? He stroked his beautiful white beard, and he said, nobody's ever asked me that before. Are you good drivers? Oh, yes, we're very good drivers. Well, he couldn't think of any reason not to, so he let us borrow his car for the evening.
Capped and perforated.
There have been all kinds of flaws in it. First of all, it's not bulletproof. We used to shoot arrows at it, and I think they were probably in Ort's class, but it poked holes in it, and they didn't know enough about it at first to know how to patch them.
Oh.
And you couldn't make anything stick to that Teflon, and so they had a terrible time trying to get the patches, and around the base of it they had an awful time. Couldn't seal it around the base, and the water ran in every time it rained, and everybody wanted to climb on it, and that wasn't a good thing either. Got up one morning, and here are tires on each one of the 4 points. There were always jokes about what it looked like, a cow's udder and all this kind of stuff.
Somebody out west of us here shot an arrow into the building. So there was this arrow stuck out of the tent for a few days.
Oh.
Someone else shot a .22 rifle shell into the side of the building. There was a mark on the wall next to the west door. For years, you could see where this thing was. This .22 shell lodged in there. They had a circle drawn around it, so it drift. It ripped one year. It tore. It just separated at the seam or something. And one of our students, who was an accomplished climber, was hired to repair it. So he went up there and sewed it back together. It's one of the best pranks ever. Someone put automobile tires over the roof peak. You can do it if you loop a rope over the top. So it comes down around the peak, and then you put the 2 ends of the rope through the tire and then pull them apart. It'll pull the tire up and drop it over the top.
Live Wire Malcolm.
Malcolm Winley. He was an electrician. I don't think he had any formal training. I think he was self-taught. But Malcolm was very knowledgeable in everything. He'd do the same thing every morning. And I kept seeing him putting things in his mouth. And finally I said, Malcolm, what do you got in your pocket? What are you eating? He goes, well, I'm having my coffee.
Oh.
And I said, you're having your coffee? And he goes, yeah. And he held his hand, his palm out, and in his palm was a bunch of coffee beans. That was his means of having his morning coffee. He would just eat the coffee beans straight. A lot of different stories about Malcolm. Falling through ceilings sometimes. Zoila Garcia, she was a history, political science
Secretary
over there. He was working up in the attic, and he accidentally stepped in the wrong spot, and he ended up falling through and landed on her desk. So that was quite the shock for her. Malcolm's kind of old school, and again, back before OSHA, lockout, tagout, and all these different regulations that we got to apply to now. He kind of did a lot of things on working on live electrical apparatuses and stuff. And I'll never forget that one day in the safety capacity, they called me, hey, there's a fire, there's smoke coming out of the boiler room down at the pavilion, which was then the campus center. I remember seeing all the smoke coming out of the door in the boiler room, and then all of a sudden I see Malcolm waving his arms, clearing the smoke, and his eyes were as big as silver dollars, and his hair was sticking straight out. He had that look. He was really scared, but he was okay. And what had happened was they always popped fuses over there because they had the radio station and everything else going over there, photo lab, and they're always blowing fuses. And they had blown a 200 amp fuse, and he went there to replace it, which he'd probably done 100 times, but it was dark in there, and he didn't see the cradle that holds the fuse. It had left the end cap was still in there. So when he put the new fuse in, then he went to close the door, it arced, and you had arc flashing, and it literally blew up in front of him. But like I said, he just had that look. I mean, thank God he was okay, because arc flash is very dangerous. I think he worked here until he was 78. That was his life. He just enjoyed being here. He was the first one there, last one to leave. We all respected him.
Epic Riot.
I taught through the prison program at the institutions. They made it into EPIC. What is that? Educational programs in
correctional institutions.
Yeah, correctional institutions. In the prison program for La Verne, exactly 35 years.
Wow.
I was in a riot at the one in Norco. It was an evening class, and they had the evening classes out in little bungalows, kind of separate, And we were sitting in our class and doing whatever, and a couple of the guys in the class were Aryan Brotherhood, and they had their swastikas all over them and everything. And it turned out that they had set up a riot between the blacks and the Hispanics, and their alibi was that they were in my class.
Oh.
And so all of a sudden we hear this big roar outside, and we see mobs of inmates coming at each other they were carrying telephone poles, like battering rams.
Really?
I mean, it was incredible. And then here come all the sirens and everything, and then here come these big truckloads of troops coming in.
Wow.
For the cops and everything. And, I mean, it was really something. And they came to the door and said, does anybody want to go back to their unit? And I wanted to get the heck out of there. But no, they all wanted to stay there because they felt they were safe. We were all looking out the windows, but we looked like Kilroy was here. We were all just kind of, And then here came the tear gas, big clouds of it. And of course it came in the windows and all of this. This went on for over an hour. And I'm thinking, how do I get out of here? And so all the troops, whether they were, I don't know who all they were, if they were just Department of Corrections or if they brought in, police, I don't know. But they were all in that combat gear.
Yeah.
And one of them came over with a big shotgun, and he was standing almost under the window, and I stuck my head out, and I said, when do I get out of here? They had told me to stay. Because all the inmates were staying, so I couldn't go. And he looked at me, his sleeve was shut. What are you doing in there? Well, they told me to stay here an hour ago. So he went and got 3 or 4 others, and they all escorted me to the gate, so I got to leave.
Ort's game. The football in the case out there that says
Ord's game.
Ord's game 53-52.
We were playing Occidental here. They were pretty good. We were pretty good. It tied at 35-35 at the end of regulation, so we're going to overtime. And in overtime, as long as you keep scoring, you keep going.
Oh.
You know, until somebody wins. Well, we couldn't stop Occidental. I don't know what it was, but we couldn't stop them. So I was coaching. I was the defensive coordinator, and we're giving up 50 points. Oxy had scored again to go ahead, 52-51. And I remember Ort looking down at me, and I said, I think he wants to know, should we go for two? I said, Ort, we haven't stopped him yet. So we extended in the field goal team, but we had a freshman quarterback holding for the kicks. He wasn't playing, he wasn't our quarterback, but he was holding. They had a freshman, John Kuslika was our freshman tight end, and they faked the extra point, and he threw it for 2-point conversion. We won the game 53-52, and Ort just had such a kick about that. And so the guys all got the ball, wrote the scores at Ort's game, and gave him the ball after the end of the game. And I remember getting calls after that game, like on Monday, from Larry Kennan and Steve Ortmeyer, saying, great defensive game, Rick. I said, yeah, we held them to 52. If we hadn't, we would have lost. Yeah, the kids put that on a ball, and because Ort got such a thrill out of that. And it was a very exciting game. As a defensive coach, I was pulling my hair out the whole game because we couldn't stop them. I still can see Ort looking down at me like, oh, what should I do? I said, well, we haven't stopped him yet. So you do whatever you want to do. And I think he wanted kind of my okay to go for two. He wanted to do that. And that's why that ball's in there. It was so typical Ort. I don't know what we're doing, giving up a football here. That costs money.
Deja vu.
So last Saturday at homecoming, that was the most exciting football game I have ever seen. And I've been coming here for 25 years. But it harkened back to a game in University of La Verne history when Roland Ortmeyer was still coach. And we played Occidental at homecoming. And went into triple overtime, and the score was 53-52. Roland Ortmeyer had the opportunity to tie the game with an extra point, but he decided it was time to go for the win. And so he sent out the 2-point conversion team. They went out there, they got it, they won. It's been called Ort's game, 53-52 against Occidental. The ball is still in the super tents, housed in there as one of the greatest games ever in La Verne history. Well, this Saturday is certainly the most exciting game ever. And I was standing back there in the end zone. We scored it. There was a couple of seconds left in the game. I looked at the guys around me and I said, Coach is going to go for two. Everybody said, no way you go for two, you got to tie it. I said, Coach is going to go for two. You don't understand. The burden of history is on him. Went out there, went for two, great play, caught it in the back of the end zone. It became the Division III Play of the Week, by the way, on the website. Fantastic pitch, fantastic catch. We won the game. Everybody was absolutely excited. And so I'm going to call this Chris Creek's game.
Heavy lifting.
Ortmeyer Stadium was kind of under construction. Back then we had the dirt track. We had the bleachers there, and then Mylan, he of course did a lot of volunteer work for the university. Mylan and Robert Rodriguez, he was a campus safety director at the time and a pro term councilman as well with La Verne. But the two used to pair up a lot on different projects, and I can remember one day being out on the field, and all of a sudden I think there must have been 2 or 3 buses pulled up, county buses, and actually what it was the LA County Fire Crew. And of course Mylan had connections with LA County Fire, and him being a fire captain himself, he had those connections. And what it was, they had laid block to put a foundation down to take the bleachers off the dirt and put them on the block foundation. And in doing so, the bleachers were fully erect. They're probably about I would say 600 feet in length. They were all intact in one piece, and what they had done, they had prearranged for the fire crew to come out. They arrived in the buses, and coming out of the buses, they got in formation. And I was simply amazed, like, organization that they had developed in working with this crew. Mylan and the other administrators there, one of them had a whistle, and they blew the whistle, and they all got in formation. And it was a feat to see, to watch them in formation, to march into the bleachers, all take their place in formation, and each of them got in one of the aisles of the bleachers, and they all got alongside of it, and the blocks were already set. Now they had to move the bleachers over 2 feet and set them on top of the blocks. And so in doing so in unison, they simply worked together as a team and picked up those bleachers and moved them over about 3 feet and set them upon that foundation that Robert Rodriguez and Marlon had built. And just as fast as it happened, it ended. They all finished their job, and they all got back in line, got back on the bus, and they left. All probably within the hour.
Rose Bowl lights.
We used to play Caltech in the Rose Bowl.
Oh.
When Caltech had football. In fact, I played in the Rose Bowl against Caltech one night. But in fact, it was at night. They lit the whole stadium up for a Caltech La Verne football game once in the Rose Bowl.
Voyeurs in the tents.
This was in the tents.
Yeah.
This was in what we called, officially it was called the Student Center,
Yeah.
but affectionately we called it the tent. The Student Center desk, information desk, and the radio studios and photography bookstore, and eventually television, because we added television. For a while, debate was in there. We used to have the health center in there in the modules and the art department. We used to have life drawing. I remember those were the great days because all of a sudden you would see students heading up the stairs for the second floor so that they could look over the wall, over the mailboxes into the art area because they were doing life drawing classes.
A problem for the art department was in life drawing classes when they had models, the guys would come up and line up along the walls and leer over the wall because you could see down in the art.
We could go up to the basketball court and look down over the side to where they had the nude models.
Dorm room style.
One of my other Red Soul stories of nightmares from there was also at the Oaks. There were 2 people who I never met, and they weren't there. They were the room occupants. And they had decided, one, they had a cat that had been living in there, and they left the cat alone like all weekend in the room. And the only reason people knew is they could hear the scratching and the clawing and their, the wanting out. But when an animal has been kept like that, it was like Psycho Kitty when they opened the door. It was and of course, it has biological functions, so it had done those.
Yeah.
And then we started to take a look around in the room, and they have bunk beds. And on the bottom of the bunk bed is just, a sheet of wood that holds it. Someone had laid on their back and sat there with a lighter and burned all these areas of the bed. For what reason, we don't know. And then they'd taken a colored sheet, and strung it from the ceiling in a big swoop motion like that. It was red just to make the whole room red, I guess.
Yeah.
And then on the wall was the most intricate painting I'd ever seen. Unfortunately, they did it on our wall. It was like a Mayan temple. Very well done. And then over by the window in a permanent marker was some philosophy or something that they had written. And it basically said something to the effect of, one must always think before they take any actions.
All wet. 3 stories.
There are always guys putting water in buckets and putting it up against your door, so when you woke up next morning, you go out in the hall, your feet were wet. So they had tricks where they put water in Coke bottles, put a cork in it and a string and a hanger. So when you pulled your cover back, there was a hanger, and if you pulled the hanger without, it only took you one time to realize what was going to happen. You'd hear glug, glug, glug. So
I was in a play in the Daily Theater building, a play called Who's Happy Now? Where the fabric is attached to the wall, those things constantly leaked. So when it rained, it leaked. We had a couple performances during a driving rainstorm, and there was so much water leaking in, we had to dump the trash cans, like during the performance.
In one of the Oaks, the ceiling comes like this and down like that. And that's where ironically, they decided to put a bunk bed. And so that, I think it was a young lady that was sleeping, rolled over and kicked off the sprinkler head.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
The Miller Hall was condemned when I was here. What it was in it was like an empty building. And the theater department kept all of their costumes there. So a couple of my friends and I, one night, broke in. I don't even know how. And we dressed up in our finery. And I don't know how we decided, but, you know, right outside the wash, okay? So somebody said that if we got down into there, there was this long tunnel in complete darkness that was really fun to go in. Well, I don't know what was fun about it.
Yeah.
But in our finery, we crawled, this was like an all-night thing. We crawled down, I don't even know how we got over it. We crawled down into this wash. And it was probably a mile in pitch black. And, you know, we can hear each other, but you can't see a darn thing.
And you didn't have any flashlights?
No flashlights. Because, you know, you're college students. And I'm sure. No flashlights. Because, you know, you're college students. And I'm sure. So we'd have to hold on to the wall, you know, and there'd be things that we'd be tripping on, you know, branches and who knows what. So we did that and then crawled out of there. And it must have been probably 2 in the morning. And, you know, La Verne is quiet now, and it was even quieter then. And we were just walking down. I can remember walking down. This is what you do when you're 19. Walking down Bonita Avenue for probably a mile, not a car. Walking on the line, you know, walking on the line.
The Mystery of 1926. Here is a mystery story. On the floor, or rather in the floor, of the middle level of Founders Hall, near what is today the President's office, is a number, or rather a date, 1926. This 4-digit code in the terrazzo pavement proclaims the year that Founders Hall was built, but no one today knows why it is there or who laid it. Presumably, an anonymous but highly skilled craftsman sketched out the date in stone as he was preparing the floor, probably secretly without telling either his supervisor or his colleagues. Hundreds of thousands of feet have probably trod over this hidden landmark in what was originally outside a number of classrooms, but those who know the mystery, like this tale teller, are happy to let their friends in on the secret. Parking structure skateboarder.
Park up there and just look around. It's a great view. On my way down, I was down about a half a turn, and I looked behind me right at the top, and there was a student on a skateboard. And he went back and forth, just absolutely in another world.
We have our risk manager in the audience that cannot say that.
This is a good story. He was absolutely loving it. So I get to the bottom, and I keep the skateboarder, in my view. And he gets to the bottom. He picks his skateboard up, puts it in his car, and drives off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to start off by saying the student who rode that skateboard down was caught, arrested. He's doing 5 years to life. It's not a safe thing to skateboard or ride bikes in a parking structure.
And I was going to make a joke about using the structure as programmable space and hopefully hosting our first roller derby in there, but the kid on the skateboard pretty much ruined that.
In preparing this segment of an oral history of the University of La Verne, I'd like especially to thank my colleagues, and particularly Brian Best, the Assistant Director of Instructional Technology, and Ben Jenkins, Assistant Professor and Archivist. I'd also like to thank the many people who participated in my oral history project, and especially those who were quoted in this particular segment: Robert Beebe, Jeff Boster, Susan Boyer, Mary Hunter Bowman, Gary Colby, Robert Dyer, Freda Fox, Rex Higgins, Ruby Montano Cordova, Bob Neer, Jonathan Reed, and Julia Wheeler.